Hi everyone, I'm Kristen, and welcome to the Murder and Myths podcast, extended mythology episode, Who Shall Wear the Crown? Today we are going to talk about the contendings of Heru and Set from episode 5, It's All Fun and Games Until Someone Loses an Eye, where we heard about the battle between Set and Heru for the throne of Egypt. The source of this story from ancient Egypt comes to us from a collection of papyri dated to the New Kingdom and the reign of Ramses V. So somewhere in the vicinity of 1149 to 1145 BC. Now there is some controversy on when the actual myth was composed, and whether it is a Middle or New Kingdom creation. But for the purpose of this episode, let's just say we know there is a copy of this myth written on papyrus from the New Kingdom. Additionally, while we have other sources that confirm that Set did challenge Heru for the throne and lost, the various details laid out in this papyrus only occur here. It's very possible that rather than a true mythological story or religious text, this story could be a work of literary fiction. The papyrus itself can be a bit tricky to read. The main judge in the trial is Ra-Harakti, but he is also referred to as Khepri and Atum, who are different deities altogether and who also appear as themselves in the story. I tried to simplify this as much as possible in my rendition. There are also very long lists of the titles and epithets of the gods, which were also omitted for brevity and understanding of the story, and you can all thank Kim for that. I've posted a copy of the contendings on our webpage, so feel free to go check that out at murderandmyths.com. And since I'll be giving you the bullet point version of the papyri in its entirety now, feel free to follow along. The beginning introduces us to the tribunal, describing that they are here to judge the matter of kingship between Heru and Set. It also gives us a brief idea of who is on each side. It is clear from the beginning that Set's major supporter is the sun god Ra, and Heru is being backed by his mother Aset. The argument for Set as king is his superior strength and power, illustrated by his ability to slay the serpent Apep daily. This is significant from a mythological and religious viewpoint. Apep was the embodiment of Isfet, the idea of chaos, evil, violence, and injustice, which was balanced by the concept of Ma'at, truth, order, justice, and harmony. The god Ra is an ardent upholder of Ma'at. The light of the sun illuminates the world of creation. Apep is Ra's enemy and is constantly trying to destroy Ra, which would allow chaos and evil to run rampant in the world. In order to allow Ra's boat, the bark of millions of years, to sail across the sky each day, Apep must be fought back, and only one god, Set, is strong enough to do so. Set is responsible for fighting back chaos to maintain order in the world. This is no small or menial feat, and as Ra sees it, justifies Set ruling Egypt over the young Heru. The argument for Heru, however, is one of inheritance. He is the son of the last rightful king, and instilling him upon the throne would set up the ongoing transition of power in a hereditary and ordered manner. We see arguing in the tribunal, and they write a letter to Neat asking for her advice, and she writes back a pretty scathing letter basically telling Ra what is what. Ra gets angry at this and hurls an insult at Heru, and then Bebon, another of the gods, hurls an insult right back at Ra, telling him, "Your shrine is vacant." On the surface, this seems like a pretty innocent diss, but in the context of worship of the gods, one whose shrine is vacant means no one is worshiping or leaving offerings or caring for the god's icon. So it's actually pretty harsh, and we see that Ra is upset by this. He lays down on the ground for a day and a half, saddened and dejected, until his daughter Heteret approaches him and flashes him. The text specifically says, exposes her vagina before his very eyes. Heteret is the goddess of mirth and beauty, so this pleased Ra, and he laughed and decreed the tribunal could continue. More bickering, and we see another reference to Set's role of slaying Apep. Aset wants to involve even more gods, the Ennead agrees, and Set gets angry and threatens to kill a god each day with his scepter. Again, Set is considered the most powerful of the gods, so this is a weighty threat. He ends his tirade by declaring that he will not accept any judgment of the tribunal as long as Aset is a part of it. They agree, and I actually think in the interest of fairness, this is a good idea, because honestly, there is no way Aset is going to judge Set fairly when he's up against her son and he killed her son's father. The Ennead moves to an island and forbids Aset from joining them. They specifically tell the ferryman Nemti not to take any women across. Well, Nemti takes a bribe from Aset, who is disguised as an old woman, and she manages to get herself to the island. She then transforms into a beautiful maiden, and Set, being great in virility, is into it, and he approaches the woman. Aset then plays a bit of verbal trickery with him. She said, "Respect, my great lord. As for me, I was a wife living with a cattleman to whom I bore a son. My husband died, and the lad started tending his father's cattle. But then a stranger came and settled in my stable. He said thus in speaking to my son, 'I shall beat you and confiscate your father's cattle and evict you. Now it is my desire to have you afford him protection.'" Set responded, "Is it while the son of the male is still living that the cattle are to be given to the stranger?" With that declaration, Aset knows she has him. This incident is relayed to the Ennead, and they tell Set he has pretty much solved this whole matter and proved Heru's point. Set's response was a complete pivot, and instead of addressing his speech, calls for the punishment of Nemti, the ferryman, for letting Aset onto the island. The Ennead still can't make a decision, so we get the hippopotamus battle, a magical spear, Aset's decapitation, Set ripping out Heru's eyes, Heteret healing them with gazelle milk, and the two are called before the Ennead for punishment. The Ennead begs them just to make peace for a little while because they are tired of this. Set and Heru agree, and Set invites Heru to stay at his palace. Content warning: this next bit contains a sexual assault, so please skip past it if you need to. I'll have the timestamps listed in the show notes, so you'll know where you can pick back up with us. Set and Heru retire to their beds, and in the night, Set gets up and goes to Heru, and as the papyrus puts it, Set caused his phallus to become stiff and inserted it between Heru's thighs. We've heard in the story a number of times that Set is powerful and virile, and this is very much an act of dominance to prove those two things, as well as demonstrating the weakness of Heru that he would let this be done to him. Heru collects the semen in his hands, and the next morning he brings it to his mother Set. She is so shocked by the sight of Set's seed that she cuts Heru's hands off. She then applies an ointment to Heru's phallus, which causes it to become erect, and she inserts it into a pot to collect Heru's semen. Set takes that semen to Set's garden and asks the gardener what vegetables Set eats, and she learns that he consumes lettuce on the daily. Set places Heru's semen on a head of lettuce that Set then proceeds to consume and is thus impregnated. Set, not knowing any of this has occurred, and being pretty proud of his dominance the other night, calls for the tribunal to meet, where he demands to be made ruler because he had performed the labor of a male against Heru. The Ennead laugh at Heru for letting this happen, to which he responds that Set is lying and he can prove it. He bids Jehudi to call forth their semen so they can see the truth of the matter. Jehudi calls forth the semen of Set, and I'm sure, much to Set's surprise, it answers from the marshes, where presumably Set disposed of it. He then calls forth the semen of Heru, which asks, "From where shall I emerge?" Jehudi suggests Set's ear, which the semen takes issue with. For being divine seed, an ear just isn't good enough for it. Jehudi says, "Okay, how about the top of Set's head?" And the semen agreed, and as it emerged, it formed a glowing solar disk above Set. Set angrily tries to grab it, but Jehudi seized it first and placed it upon his own head as a crown. The Ennead are pretty much in agreement now that Heru is right and Set is wrong, and Set makes one last-ditch effort to secure his rule by demanding that the two of them build stone boats to race. We saw how well that went. Another hippopotamus transformation, and the ensuing correspondence between the Ennead and Wasir, which results in Heru taking the throne. Putting aside arguments over whether this was a religious doctrine or a work of fiction, I think there are some kernels of understanding that can be wrought from this story. As I mentioned before, the victory of Heru set up the system of hereditary rule in Egypt. This is further enforced by the idea that the king is a living Heru and contains a divinity which is tied with that role. So following the mythology, when the current king dies and becomes Wasir, which is also a title given to the deceased as well as the name of a god, the son now assumes the role of Heru and is given a divine right to rule. We see this patrilinear succession take place over and over again within the dynasties of Egypt. The association with the male god Heru and kingship even explains why on the occasion there was a female pharaoh, such as the case with Hatshepsut, we see her depicted as a male in her formal roles as king. I think that pretty much wraps things up for today's extended mythology. I'm definitely not an expert on these topics, but I do love telling these stories, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this one more in depth with me. As always, if you have any comments, corrections, or suggestions, please feel free to email me at murderandmyths@gmail.com. Reach out via our website, murderandmyths.com, or send a message on Twitter @murderandmyths. Join us next week for episode 6, Drink Me. And as always, come for the murder and stay for the myths.